I'm really starting to feel like I'm the one guy in the world that has problems with Okay, so Cecil Stedman has done no wrong. In fact, Cecil Stedman can do no wrong. Cecil Stedman is Invincible's most goated character.
And this house
Cecil Stedman
is a hero. End of story.
The thing is, the reason why I love Cecil so much, besides the fact that he's a very complex and interesting character, is due to what I think is a flaw in Invincible's writing that actually made him more likable than he was ever meant to be. Let me explain. The first time I saw Cecil Stedman on screen, I immediately hated him. I thought he was going to be the traditional, insensitive, all-important, power-hungry government agent who thinks he can do whatever he likes for the sake of his own warped view of the greater good, and who constantly belittles and disregards everyone around him because of it. The worst blend of Nick Fury and Amanda Waller. Granted, I hadn't read the comics, and I still haven't, but that was the first impression he left me with. Over the course of the series, however, he quickly grew to become one of my favorite characters. Smart, capable, in control, and surprisingly, actually human. However, all throughout the show, something felt off about him, about the way he was presented, and I couldn't exactly put my finger on it until season 3 concluded. Throughout the course of the show, we're constantly told by the many characters of Invincible that Cecil is a cunning, serious, often angry man who does whatever it takes to get what he needs, and that he's willing to sacrifice superheroes like pawns in order to do so. That seems to be the public perception of him by characters like Debbie, Nolan, and many heroes on the Teen Team / Guardians of the Globe. We get several instances of these characters expressing their negative opinions on Cecil in dialogue. The more instances of that I saw, the more I wondered how I still liked Cecil so wholeheartedly, despite everyone talking about all his flaws. With time, I realized that I still liked him because of one very obvious thing, which is the fact that throughout the first 2 seasons, we basically never see him do anything extreme like that. Don't get me wrong, there are several instances of him being rude, obtrusive, controlling, demanding, you name it, but throughout the first 2 seasons, there's so little to show you that he's actually very morally gray and very willing to sacrifice heroes willy-nilly and treat them like tools. In fact, his actions often show the opposite. Let's look at season 1 for instance. Does Cecil actually do anything to lend credence to the things other characters say about him? There are 2 things we could cite here. One is him sending Damien Darkblood back to hell. He himself says he's morally gray here, and I admit it was pretty ruthless, especially given that Darkblood was trying to do the right thing by exposing Nolan. However, we can understand it in the moment, because it's clear Cecil is doing it to keep a lid on the whole Nolan investigation, for fear that Nolan might literally just slaughter everyone. And after Nolan goes batshit in the finale of season 1, it becomes clear that Cecil was warranted in his worrying. The second thing he does that showcases his extreme nature is when Nolan and Mark are fighting against the kaiju. They're clearly struggling against it, and Debbie asks him to teleport them back, but he refuses, saying that he's unsure if Mark is fighting on Nolan's side, and that getting them away from the kaiju would rid him of his only advantage against them. Yeah, this is extreme behavior from Cecil, because Mark could die because of it, but at the same time, it is necessary and quite understandable. Because if Mark truly has joined his father, they can quite literally slaughter everyone, and it's a risk Cecil simply can't take. And when he makes this decision and explains it to Debbie, she says this is why she's always hated him. And he mumbles that this is why he hates himself too. It's a throwaway line, but it's clearly meant to showcase the fact that Cecil is aware of how extreme he needs to act sometimes, and that he doesn't enjoy it. This line alone humanizes him greatly, and though it's a little on the nose, it ensured that I would continue to support his actions. So basically, season 1 has only these 2 instances of Cecil behaving in an extreme manner, and both are done in a relatively mild way that is clearly justified. But despite that, the characters of the show still talk massive shit about him. Lines like Debbie's "this is why I've always hated you" are jarring to me. I understand her saying that in the moment because it's her own child and husband at risk, but this extreme hatred she expresses doesn't quite click for me, because the actions the series had shown me thus far really weren't enough to back it up or for me to want to take her side. Instead, I continued to like Cecil, because it seemed like I was only hearing about how bad he was, but never seeing outright instances of it, or at least when I did see something, it was not extreme and it was kind of justified. This is what I meant when I said I think it's a flaw in the writing. It's the classic mistake of telling and not showing, or at least telling too much and not showing enough. And maybe overall, the general portrayal of Cecil was still effective enough to spur many fans to regard him as a controversial figure. But for someone like me, who quickly realized that this man was literally responsible for defending the entire Earth from horrors beyond comprehension, that he held the weight of the world in responsibilities, I quickly became supportive of him as a character, and I was inclined to like and respect him. So in addition to my already positive view, I wasn't shown enough extreme actions from him over the course of the show, but rather only heard it from characters. And so that made me just default to that original positive view. I didn't get to see him do something that I had to contemplate whether I could support or not, and so my opinion of him continued to be positive, and I continued to really like him as a character. This also applies to Season 2, for the most part. It isn't until Season 3 that actually changes. Obviously, in Season 3, Cecil starts to do some more questionable things, actions more fitting of how people talked about him, actions like secretly putting that high-frequency noise implant in Mark's ear. But to me, at this point, I'd already gotten too attached to the character and had grown accustomed to understanding his actions. I definitely think he was in the right during his clash with Mark, because Mark was displaying obvious aggression and demanding that he put Darkwing and Sinclair back in prison. And so Cecil acted in self-defense, even if via a threat. And then things spiraled out of control. I can make a whole court-approved case explaining all the reasons I think he's right, but I think the Mark v. Cecil debate has already been beaten to death, and I do mention it in my full season review video, along with the show creator Robert Kirkman's opinion on it. Regardless, it's obvious that Cecil could very much work on his communication skills, and that the lack of those skills, in addition to the very stressful job of being a normal-ass human trying to defend against superhuman-ass threats 24/7, caused him to escalate a situation that could have been quelled in a much simpler manner. And maybe if he fixed those communication skills, the people around him would stop talking so much shit about him so casually and realize that he is truly under an enormous weight to keep the literal entire world safe, which is why he's practically always justified. The one place he may have gone too far was when he kept Conquest alive at the end of Season 3. There is an argument to be made that that is in fact stupid. But yes, circling back to my original point, it's clear that the writer's intent was to make Cecil a controversial character that you're meant to be wary of as a viewer, who you're meant to disagree with sometimes because of his inevitable ideological clashes with the heroes. But because for 2 seasons the show seemed like it was only telling me Cecil was extreme and that he does whatever it takes but not showing it to me enough, it failed to portray him as that controversial character in my eyes, inadvertently causing me to just full-on support him all the time and like him more in the way I would like a traditional protagonist. It inadvertently made him plain likable. And that's that. That's why Cecil is the GOAT, and that's why Cecil can do no wrong. Thanks for watching. Feel free to bite my head off in the comments below. God knows enough people did that during my full season review. See you soon.